Okay, folks, well, I think we'll make a start. So welcome, everybody. Great to have you all here. On behalf of the Scotland and Medicine Network, I want to thank you all for coming along this afternoon. I'm Matthew Jarron. I'm the Museum Curator at the University of Dundee, and I'm currently the Chair of Scotland and Medicine. So the network was originally founded way back in 2004, bringing together a wide variety of museums, archives and libraries, large and small, that look after medical collections. Over the years, we've done a variety of different activities, including touring exhibitions, training courses, conferences, a small grant scheme for our members, and various others. But this is our very first online public event, so fingers crossed the technology will keep going, won't let us down at any point. So we've got a packed programme for you this afternoon. We will take a short break halfway through just to give you a chance to stretch your legs. But we have asked all of our speakers to keep to a maximum of 5 minutes, so we're going to be quite ruthless about that. Of course, one of the good things about doing this on Zoom is we do have the power to mute anyone that goes on too long, so speakers, you have been warned. Okay, without further ado, let's get started, and I'm delighted to welcome our first speaker, who is Claire McDade from the Royal College of Physicians and Surgeons of Glasgow. So Claire, I will hand over to you.
Thank you very much, Matthew. Can you see my screen okay?
Yep.
Excellent. Well, I've drawn the short straw, so I'm the guinea pig for trying to keep to time, so I'll do my best. So I'm Claire McDade. I'm from the Royal College of Physicians and Surgeons of Glasgow. For those that don't know us, we were founded back in 1599 by King James VI of Scotland through a royal charter granted to Peter Lowe, a surgeon, Robert Hamilton, a physician, and William Spang, an apothecary. And this established the college as a unique medical and surgical body, the first multidisciplinary institution set up to improve standards of healthcare, protecting the public from incompetent practitioners. We originally met in Blackfriars Kirk in Glasgow, and then in 1689 we got our own building next to what is now the Tron Theatre at Trongate in the medieval heart of Glasgow. And we subsequently moved to St Enoch's in 1791 and then St Vincent Street, where we are now, in 1862. And we're now an international college with around 15,000 members worldwide. This is where I attempt to move my screen on and hope that it will work. Here we are. We have now an amazing and substantial library, museum and archive collection, and we're an accredited museum as well. The library was established when we erected our first building in Trongate in 1698, and there are now around 40,000 volumes ranging from 1479 to the present day. We've got rare treasures. This is Andrea Vesalius's 1543 De Humani Corporis Fabrica, which is a foundational text in anatomy, and apologies for my terrible Latin. Our oldest book is by 12th century Arabic scholar Serapion the Younger, translated into Latin and printed in Venice in 1479. We also have work by Ibn Sina, or Avicenna, as he's known in the West. His Canon of Medicine was a seminal and influential work, originally written in 1025 and published in Venice in 1544. It set the standards for medicine in medieval Europe and the Islamic world, and was used as a standard medical textbook throughout the 18th century in Europe. Continuing with the library collection, we've also got amazing works, ornithological and other natural history works, including this, Audubon's The Birds of America. This is, we have a half set of the first edition was a double elephant folio size in 4 volumes. We've got the first 2 volumes published in 1838 and purchased in 1838 by the college, and we're actually working on a special exhibition which is opening at the end of April in our library, so you'll all be very welcome to come along and see that. We also have medical and surgical texts, books on the history of Glasgow and Scotland. We've got a first edition of Darwin's On the Origin of Species from 1859. We've got 19th century anatomy and materia medica books, and we've got a special collection on works relating to Glasgow in the west of Scotland. So quite a wide range. Moving on to the archive collection, the archives date from the foundation of the college and come right up to the present day. The earliest, we have continuous records in 1602, including minute books, examination registers and vaccination registers. The vaccination registers are just amazing. In 1801, the college opened one of the first vaccine centres in the UK, and the registers show that in the first 5 years of the college's vaccination programme, 10,000 people, mainly children, had been vaccinated, the college was the only professional medical body to deliver a public vaccination programme. So that's the picture on the left there. You can see a 4-month-old and a 12-month-old baby and another 4-month-old baby were being vaccinated there. We also have papers featuring some of the greatest minds in medicine, such as Joseph Lister, William McEwen, Nobel Prize winner Ronald Ross, papers of other physicians and surgeons, including casebooks, manuscripts, letters and photos, and records of medical and surgical groups and societies from Glasgow and the west of Scotland. So an amazing range. And our museum or heritage collection, it spans over 6 centuries. There's surgical instruments, medicine kits and works of art. Top left there, you've got William Beattie's instruments from 1803. He was the Irish surgeon aboard HMS Victory during the Battle of Trafalgar in October 1805, so a bit of a star item there. And bottom left, sorry for anybody if anybody's a bit queasy with things like this, that's a Trefine set from 1740. The middle image is a dental key, don't ask. And on the right-hand side, one of Lister's carbolic sprays, so another quite an amazing item to have in the collection. And we say we are an accredited museum. We were accredited in 2015, and we have collections sort of dispersed around the building in different exhibition spaces, and we hold all kinds of different events throughout the year, including Doors Open Day every September. We also have a very fine art collection. It was strongly influenced by the first honorary curator of art, Dr. T.J. Honeyman, who was also the curator of the director of Kelvin Grove Art Galleries and brought the Burrow collection to Glasgow. And he was a medical doctor by training, and he advised
on time warning, Claire, just to...
Right, nearly done, thank you. He advised on purchases of art, and this on the left here is a new portrait, actually only created in 2024, of our very first female fellow, Jemini Sen, in 1912, but painted in 2024 by Grace Payne Kumar. It's a brand new commission. And we, as I say, we have a range of different events throughout the year. And if I can just move on. It seems to have frozen, but basically that is the end of my presentation. There we are. Just managed to finish up just to say we have a website. There's lots of stuff online you can see, and this is where we are. That's in Vincent Street in Glasgow. That's me. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Claire. Sorry to rush you at the end there. But it keeps set a good example about keeping to time. Okay, we're now going to head over to Stirling. I'm delighted to introduce Rosie Al-Mulla Taylor from the University of Stirling Archives and Special Collections. So Rosie, hand over to you.
Thank you very much. Can you see my slide?
Yes.
Perfect. So whistle stop tour. The University of Stirling Archives and Special Collections is home to the NHS Force Valley Archive. So at the moment, we expect kind of constant accruals for that collection, but at the moment this mainly comprises 2 large historic hospital collections, those of the Stirling District Asylum and the Royal Scottish National Hospital. So these collections are completely catalogued. They hold a great deal of patient information, which is sort of widely used by family history researchers, very often undergraduate work in our division of History, Heritage and Politics. The SDA archive is notable for a sort of amazing run of case note volumes for roughly sort of 1869 to 1916, 1917, which provide really in-depth detail of a patient's stay, sort of their symptoms, their treatments. These case notes are most often accompanied by photographs, can be augmented by enclosed medical charts, letters, newspaper clippings. And we also hold a run of the Passing Hour, which is the institution's subscriber magazine. That contains some really amazing detail about daily life at Stirling District Asylum, as well as some other sort of broader societal contexts, particularly at the beginning of World War I. So just a note to say that Stirling District Asylum is subsumed into the NHS when it's created and becomes Beldyke Hospital in 1960. And we do have much less on the institution post-World War I. But we do hope to receive those records in time, and I'd say the possibility of there being many more records out there for these hospitals was recently brought very close to home with the donation of 120 volumes from a private collection for the Stirling District Asylum Archive, which introduced our first staff records for SDA that we've ever had, as well as records for bodies which kind of controlled admission, like the Stirling District Board of Control. So Stirling District Asylum and the Royal Scottish National Hospital were really renowned for their innovative practices. SDA in doing so much to professionalise mental health nursing, and RSNH in its much more kind of modern approach to treating children. The RSNH archive contains some administrative material, but the real jewel in the crown is the thoroughness with which it discusses its patients. So the archive contains over 3,000 applications to the institution, and these forms are supplemented by kind of further paperwork, some correspondence, medical information on admitted patients, forming these sort of wonderful packs for each patient. And the richness of this series and RSNH's overall kind of innovation in the treatment of children earned this collection an inscription in UNESCO's Memory of the World Register in 2013. In the NHS Forth Valley Archive, we do have some smaller collections for some other kind of local hospitals, such as Falkirk District Royal Infirmary and Stirling Royal Infirmary. The bulk of the FDRI historic material sort of celebrates various expansions and rebuilds of the hospital, and with an amazing selection of social history from the 1930s, in particular, fundraising for the new Falkirk District Royal Infirmary building. The notable core of the Stirling Royal Infirmary archive is the Stirling Royal Infirmary Nurses League magazine, which kind of alongside the Passing Hour actually has been digitised and can be found on JSTOR. I've got a link on my last slide. These magazines detail over 30 years of development in nursing in Scotland, so really, really rich resource, which segues quite nicely onto our sort of general nursing collection, which is amassed in and around these other collections, through which we kind of built up a nucleus of syllabi, exam papers, alongside a small kind of object collection as well that really speaks to nursing education in Scotland, and feeds into some of the things I've already been speaking about, such as that mental health nursing focus and the education at Stirling Royal Infirmary. Before I move on from the NHS Forth Valley Archive, I should also mention that we're kind of slowly but surely taking in material that relates to the actual administration of that regional NHS board as well. But to leave the NHS behind, inevitably kind of like collections attract like collections, and off the back of holding the NHS Forth Valley Archive, we've accessioned the archive of William Simpson's Asylum, which is not an NHS institution, but is situated locally in Clean, where it still functions as a care home. So it no longer focuses solely on ex-servicemen, but it does still look at things like substance abuse, which have historically been some key specialisms. The historic archive is vast, with a great deal of material on the running of the Clean estate, which housed the asylum and still houses the care home. And volunteers at the university are just about to finish a very large-scale conservation project to make these records that you can see on the slide. So we have 4 of these trunks, hundreds and hundreds of documents, as well as some bound volumes available for the first time. So you could be the very first researchers to use this archive to access this material. And last of all, on the Whistle Stop Tour, we formed a COVID-19 pandemic archive in 2021 here at the university, with the launch of our oral history project, which interviewed staff and students at the university about their experiences during the first few years of the pandemic. So there's now over 60 interviews in the collection, which is supplemented by diaries, ephemera, NHS and government communication, PPE, and a large photographic archive. So please do get in touch. We'd love to hear from you and help with your research, assist your students, all of this. We've been known to host external classes and tours and things like that for the NHS Forth Valley Archive as well. So yeah, thank you. That's me.
Thank you so much. It was great. It's always lovely to see boxes bulging full of papers. Love it. If you could just shot it. Lovely. Excellent. Okay, and don't forget, folks, if you have any questions of any of the speakers, do write them in the chat. Now, our next speaker is Malcolm MacCallum from the Anatomical Museum at the University of Edinburgh. Now, Malcolm unfortunately couldn't be here with us in person, but he has pre-recorded his talk for us, which just means I need to do some clever technical stuff here, and hopefully you'll see this in a moment.
Good afternoon, I'm Malcolm, curator of the Anatomical Museum at the University of Edinburgh's Medical School, which is 300 years old this year. I look after the 12,000 strong collection in what is one of the largest and most historic anatomy collections in the United Kingdom. Our museum dates from 1798, and this is how it looked when it opened in its new premises at Teviot Place in Edinburgh in 1884. At this point, it became an integral part of what was, at the time, Europe's largest medical school. In the 1950s, the museum was reduced in size. This is how it looks today. The museum is open once a month to the public. Under the terms of the Human Tissue Act, we require a licensed teacher of anatomy to be on the premises when we open. We have timed tickets for the open days and usually get around 400 people attending. Open day has arts and crafts activities and usually a talk from our anatomists, as well as a chance to visit the historic displays. Our last open day was on Valentine's Day and was heart-themed, so we had a talk on the anatomy of the heart, built to beat, and we also had a drop-in workshop where you could paint a 3D printed heart and take it away. Our day-to-day role, however, is a study and research space for the medical students taking anatomy modules. The collection is a fairly remarkable survival, as it has been in constant use for teaching, so it gets continually handled. As you might expect, a 300-year history comes with plenty of challenges, particularly how human remains were collected in the 19th century and added to the collection. This is undoubtedly a colonial collection. Lots of skulls were taken from mortuaries, prisons, sacred land and battlefields throughout the British Empire. While we sometimes know about the collectors, and they were often medical school graduates, we know less about the individuals collected. A major part of my role today is working on the repatriation of ancestral remains to their original communities. I have personally been involved in repatriations to Sri Lanka, Taiwan, Canada, Japan and the USA. The story of our museum is complicated by the addition of what was the collection of Edinburgh Phrenological Society, which was transferred to the anatomy department in the 1880s. This included around 400 life and death masks and around 400 skulls. Phrenology is today very much a discredited pseudoscience. It was thought that feeling the bumps and lumps on the head could tell you about a person's character, intelligence or personality. It was used by believers of phrenology to promote a racial hierarchy. Our most recent repatriation took place to the Muskogee Creek Nation in the USA. We believe this is the first ever return of ancestral remains to mainland USA, so it was a significant moment. The Muskogee are a self-governed Native American tribal nation numbering around 103,000 people today, and they are the fourth largest federally recognized tribe in the USA. After being forcibly removed from their homeland in the southeastern United States in the 1820s, the tribe is now based in Oklahoma. The 6 skulls we returned in January were originally given to the Edinburgh Phrenological Society by an American physician called Professor William Byrd Powell. He was a strong believer in phrenology. He looted Native American gravesites to study the skulls and handed the remains over to the Phrenological Society. To enable repatriation, we rely on our archival records to give us evidence of where they came from and who took them. Luckily, in this instance, we had a minute book that recorded in details Bride Powell's activities. As an aside, when Powell died in 1866, he bequeathed his own head to one of his favourite students in Cincinnati. We expect to be involved in more repatriations in future months. Professionally and personally, I've found these to be very rewarding indeed. Finally, we have a full programme of events, talks and even an exhibition at Surgeons Hall Museum opening very soon, which commemorates the 300th year of our medical school. There's a dedicated website which I have noted here. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much to Malcolm for pre-recording that for us. It's so interesting to hear about all that repatriation work. Okay, now we're going to zoom up to Aberdeen, and delighted to introduce Jane Pirie from the University Collections in Aberdeen. So Jane, I'll hand over to you. You're still muted, Jane, we can't hear you.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yep.
Can you see my screen?
See you as well.
Excellent. Okay, so University Collections in the University of Aberdeen is composed of 3 main groups. So we have rare printed materials, archives and manuscripts, and museum objects. Aberdeen University was founded in 1495 and has taught medicine for over 500 years, which has led to a collection reflecting a continuous practice of medical learning in the city. The collections, however, date from antiquity and continue to grow, recording the history of medicine and in particular the university's role in advancing medical teaching and research. At the latest count, there were 225,000 rare printed materials, 3,000 plus archives, individual archives, and 214,000 museum objects. And I've chosen 2 from each of these disciplines, so it's very unrepresentative. I'll start with the archival collections. So they include notes from medical lectures, treatises, prescriptions, herbals, patients' case notes, dispensary records, and the records of medical societies and individuals, including correspondence, diaries, and journals. So there are papers such as those of Alexander Ogston, whose collection includes his journals and accompanying photograph albums, recording his travels in Europe in the late 19th century and his wartime experiences as a military surgeon in South Africa in 1900 and Italy and Serbia in 1916 to 17. There are also papers of Mary Esselman, who graduated BSc from Aberdeen in 1914, gained a medical degree in London in 1923, and returned to Aberdeen, where she was known as Dr. Mary. She was a pioneer for female doctors in the Northeast, amongst things, a member of the Council of the VMA for 23 years, and an advocate for the improvement of public health. Her papers are here, along with a series of oral history interviews recorded just before her death. The collection of print materials contains key texts in the history of medicine and anatomy, and whole libraries donated by individual doctors and surgeons. Early benefactors include Aberdonian Duncan Liddell, who bequeathed his library of scientific and medical books to Marischal College in 1613, and Alexander Reid, who was a native of Banchory, who became physician to Charles I. Reid's copy of William Harvey's Circulation of the Blood is meticulously annotated and records his interaction with the theory, which he didn't wholly endorse at all. The museum contains medical objects and collected and donated from antiquity to the present day, but the 2 main medical collections are anatomy and pathology and forensic medicine. The latter collection was developed in the 20th century to provide an historical record of disease and death in the northeast of Scotland, and includes specimens and objects that relate to crimes of note in Aberdeen. The anatomy collection was established in the 1870s, and it includes skeletal material, fluid-preserved specimens of human tissue, but also works on paper, including a collection of anatomical drawings produced for Professor Robert Lockhart's Anatomy of the Human Body by various artists and photographers, but including Alberto Morocco here. Also of note is the historical model collection, which dates from the 19th and early 20th centuries. There's an extremely rare life-size papier-mâché model of a man by Azu, and a Bock Stegerlitz anatomical model of the ear, which is still used in teaching today. So all this stuff, what do we do with it? We are a research collection. Our holdings are always in use. The anatomy collections, of course, are still used in teaching, and university collections as a department takes an active teaching role in the medical humanities course, which allows current medical students to interrogate objects from across the collections. And we're, of course, still collecting. There's a recent collaboration with the Medical Chirurgical Society, which is entitled History of Medical Care in North East Scotland, and has added a number of recordings to the oral histories. The project captures the experiences of the University of Aberdeen's medical professionals and comprises written and oral histories from the post-war period to the present day, and this is going to be published in book form next month. So that's a quick overview, some very particular examples, but do look on our catalogue if you want to see more. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was great. Well done for getting that huge collection down to a small number of items. Very impressed. Okay, we're now going to move back to Edinburgh. I'm delighted to welcome Louise Neilson from the Lothian Health Services Archive at the University of Edinburgh. Louise, hand over to you.
Hello. Is that working?
It is.
Excellent. So my name is Louise Neilson and I'm the Access Officer for Lothian Health Services Archive. So I'm just going to really quickly explain who we are. I'll talk you through some of the highlights of our archive, and then I'll explain how you can get in touch with us. So we are the archive of NHS Lothian, so we collect the historically important records of local hospitals as well as other health-related material from the area. We've been in existence since 1967. Our earliest record dates from 1594. However, most of our records, especially our clinical records, date from 1729 when the Royal Infirmary of Edinburgh opened. You can largely split our records into two main types. So the first is the collections of NHS hospitals or NHS administrative bodies, and the second is non-NHS collections of institutions, organisations and individuals. So our records include things like patient and staff records, administrative records, photographs, and we have a very small object collection. As you can imagine, one of the strengths of our collections is hospital records and clinical records. So we have patient records starting from 1729. We have over 1 million folder-based patient records. We have staff records, so training records, for example. There's financial and administrative records, architectural plans and photographs, and these help to build up an idea of the history of the treatment of patients, as well as the day-to-day running of hospitals. The largest collection that we have is of the Royal Infirmary of Edinburgh, with records dating back almost 300 years. Another one of our strengths is in the history of psychiatry in Scotland. The largest collection we have of this type is from the Royal Edinburgh Hospital, which opened in 1813. But we also have other district asylum records, such as Bangor, Rosalie and Haddington. These are really popular with researchers, largely due to the amount of patient-produced records that they have. So we have a patient-produced magazine, there's letters written by patients, and there's artwork. So it provides quite a unique kind of patient perspective on their treatment. Another really important part of our collections is those relating to HIV and AIDS in the area. So they chart the rise and response to HIV and AIDS in Lothian and combine the records of the NHS, the local government, charities and campaign groups. And 11 of these collections were added to the UNESCO UK Memory of the World Register in May 2011, which really just highlights how significant these collections are. We have a growing number of collections relating to community and volunteer-led healthcare. So, for example, we have the archive of the cervical smear campaigns. This is a campaign from the 1980s that campaigned to overturn a decision by NHS Lothian to put a freeze on cervical testing. We also have the archive of CAPS Advocacy, so it's a local mental health advocacy group. We work very closely with them, as well as holding their archive. We also have been involved in a number of workshops with the group and have recently started to help deliver a course that they run. We also have the archive of the Lothian Gay and Lesbian Switchboard. So this was a volunteer-run helpline in Edinburgh that started in 1974. If you want to get in touch with us, we would be happy to hear from you. We have put our email address and phone number on the screen. I will say our email address is monitored 5 days a week, but we can't always be available to answer the phone, so please bear that in mind. We do have a public reading room that's open Tuesday to Friday via appointment only, but it is open to everyone, so please do get in touch if you want to come and see any of our collections. And we also offer a remote inquiry service for those who can't visit the reading room in person. So please do get in touch and ask me any questions, and that's me.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. That's great. Fantastic images there as well. Okay, we're now moving over to Glasgow. Delighted to welcome Mike Rutherford from the Hunterian at the university. So, Mike, I'll hand over to you.
Helps if I unmute. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Mike Rutherford. I'm Curator for Zoology and Anatomy at the Hunterian University of Glasgow. And I'm just going to be giving a brief summary of the range of our collections. It's not moving. There we go. Sorry. So the Hunterian Museum, one of the earliest public museums of Scotland, opened in 1807 and housed the collections, anatomy and pathology collections of William Hunter, which he donated to the University of Glasgow. These collections moved to the Gilbert Scott Building in 1870, and then not long afterwards to the extension that was built onto that for anatomy, the Thompson Building, and at a purpose-built museum, and they moved there in 1901, and the majority of the collection is still there. Pathology took a bit of a trip and went to Royal Infirmary for a short time, in 1954, but then came back and rejoined the rest of the collection in 2012. The main contributors to our collections, these gentlemen here, obviously William Hunter to start with. He formed the bulk of the anatomy and pathology collections from his bequest. Then Professor Alan Thompson, who was Regius Professor of Anatomy in the late 1800s. He expanded the collections in a wide range of directions, acquiring remains from all over, but also adding in animal remains. Professor John Cleland carried on that with more comparative anatomy animal remains, and then a small collection from Sir William McEwen as well, consisting of models and many other items. The collections have been well catalogued throughout their history. There's original Hunter list from the late 1700s. Then Captain Lasky wrote up a description of the Hunterian Museum in 1813. Then John Teacher, who was an anatomist and pathologist, wrote catalogue in 1900. And this was further expanded on by Alice Marshall and John Burton, pictured here, in 1962 and 1970. And this anatomy and pathology catalogues still forms the basis of understanding our collections. The wet collections both contain anatomical and pathological remains, approximately around 3,000 remains. Vast majority are stored in ethanol, but there are a variety of other ones in turpentine, formalin, and there's a good range of mercury injections preparations, largely done by Hunter in his investigations into the lymphatic systems. The dry collections, around 1,000 remains, skeletal remains, skulls, and a large collection of calculi as well, which were of particular interest to Hunter. There's many historic models, teaching models acquired by the department, and then more recent plastic models. There's a bit of a mix of what is looked after by the Hunterian and what is looked after by the anatomy department, and the models certainly reflect that. Casts as well, the gravidutri casts being probably the most famous ones. These were teaching models made by Hunter for his anatomy school, but there's also lots of corrosion casts, which are much more recent, from the 1950s and onwards. There's also an interesting collection of materia medica, which is sort of falling into our purview as well. This is originally in the pharmacology department, assembled by Professor Stockman in the early 1900s. It's a worldwide in origin and has been recently catalogued and is available for searching in our online catalogue. Our actual main displays, we've got in the Hunterian Museum, there's a history of medicine up on the first floor, and that includes the list of medical advancements and discoveries made in Glasgow, including things such as lithotomy, asepsis, ultrasound, and many more. Examples of some of the equipment is your must-have Lister's carbolic steam spray, and Lister's sterilizer being amongst some of the items from the history of medicine collections. There's also displays on nursing care in Glasgow, and a student-led display that looked at folk healing and midwifery. The archives and special collections of the university, part of the libraries, contains William Hunter's archives and rare books, including his original copies of the Graviuterus Atlas, and the archives of many of the staff connected with the Anatomy Museum as well. The latest research we've been involved in, we had a few requests for tissue sampling from some of teachers' remains, from some of hunters' remains. This led to an international collaboration with Fred Hutchins Cancer Research Center in the States, and resulted in this discovery of rhinovirus or cold virus from this woman's lungs. And this was reported recently in the New Scientist, and a paper is coming out in Science, hopefully very soon. The policies that cover our collections, we've got a human remains policy, which is available to view online, the link there. And on that page, we also have a list of all of our current holdings. The repatriation policy is also included there. And like Edinburgh, we've undergone several repatriations of late and are in the process of completing several more to places including Ireland, New Zealand, and Australia. We had recently returned to South Africa that was very well received, but it's certainly an area that we're very keen on carrying on work in. Access to the Anatomy Museum itself is restricted to 1 day a month. We have an Eventbrite page. Myself and members of the Anatomy Department, Andrew Jocks in particular, will guide people around the collections and give a brief introduction. But the Hunterian Museum, where we have the history of medicine displays, are open Tuesday to Sunday, 10 till 5. For contacts, we are always happy to have inquiries, research visits, object queries, historical information, and so on. For anatomy and pathology collections, contact myself. For the history of medicine, contact Nicky Reeves. And archives and special collections have their own email address there as well. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Yeah, fantastic collection. That story about the lungs is really amazing, actually. Okie dokie, right. So we're now delighted to introduce one of my colleagues from here at Dundee. Delighted to welcome Alasdair Bachell from the University of Dundee Archive Services. So Alasdair, over to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Matthew. Let me just get started here. Right, is that looking okay then? Excellent. Yep. Okay, thank you very much for having me. My name is Alasdair Bachell. I'm an archivist here at the University of Dundee. I'm also project archivist looking at an NHS collection, which I will talk about very briefly. So we have numerous different collections relating to medicine, the history of medicine in the university. Primarily, we are the noted repository for NHS Tayside, which covers hospitals, asylums, and other institutions across the Tayside region, which includes Perth and Kinross, Dundee, and Angus. This can be split into both asylum and hospital records. So I've started off with asylum records here, as these tend to be the ones used by researchers the most. So we have a huge array of patient records, staff records, statistical information, and reports, as well as other administrative records covering a variety of different mental health institutions across the region. These can range very much in type and quality. We've got a very good example of patient case notes on the left there from Murray Royal, which include things like family trees, additional notes, and photographs, which is quite special. These records get used quite extensively, not only for research, but also teaching within the university. And we have links with various different courses, including medical arts courses and illustration students at Duncan Jordanson College of Art and Design. And we use these primarily not only to teach the history of the institutions, but also to challenge perceptions around mental health care over the years. Hospital records, similarly diverse. This includes patient records and staff records and extensive photography, in addition to architectural drawings, one there for Dundee Royal Infirmary. These also compose some of the oldest records we have for our medical collections, going back to around 1793 for the Royal Infirmary themselves. But we also have quite a lot of information about the opening of Nine Wells Hospital, which is the main hospital now in Dundee. As with other NHS collections, these are not all open, although you are very welcome to make inquiries and visit to see the records that are. Records are closed for a period of 100 years, so just keep that in mind if you're going to be making inquiries. We also have the archive records of the university itself and the medical school and life sciences, as it's known now. This includes some of the records of the anatomy department and the drug discovery unit. We also hold staff records for particular members of staff who carried out notable research projects. So I've got a couple of examples here. Professor Cook, who was a member of staff in the early 20th century, did a lot of research around nutrition and vitamins, and did a very well-known study around the effect of cholesterol in the body, in which he ate 20 eggs a day for several months and measured various excretions in his blood to measure the effect of cholesterol. So we have a lovely list of his diet across that period, which I wouldn't recommend that people replicate. Dr. James Riley is a very important man if you happen to have either hay fever or asthma, as his research was instrumental in development of antihistamines and Ventolin inhalers. And then Professor Margaret Fairley, who I haven't pictured here, was Scotland's very first professor, and obviously very important in the fields of midwifery and gynecology. And we also hold, as the example here on the right, numerous different anatomical drawings that were used in teaching in the mid-20th century. And in addition to these collections, we have numerous other smaller collections relating to healthcare and disability across the city and internationally. So just as a few examples, the woman on the left here standing in front of the castle is Professor Ruth Young, and she was very interested in maternal health and childcare. She traveled very extensively across the world, and we hold her diaries that she took during this period, which are absolutely fascinating. The Brittle Bone Society, we hold the collection of this charity. So they're a Dundee-based charity who assist people who have a condition called osteogenesis imperfecta or brittle bones, which you may have heard of. They were founded in 1968 and are still headquartered here in Dundee, and they have a very extensive collection which covers that entire period. So it's a very interesting collection, not only from the perspective of the condition itself, but also the social history around disability charities in the UK at the time. And then on the right-hand side, this is a photograph from the Torrance collection, which is a massive photographic collection that documents the Sea of Galilee mission and the founding of the Tiberias Hospital in Palestine in the late 19th century. So that's a really quick whistle-stop tour of our collections. We have a lot to offer, so please do get in touch. All our details are there on the screen. We are open for sort of walk-ins, but we highly advise you book in advance, as we may be teaching or otherwise out of the office. Happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alasdair. That was great. And in fact, I'm going to be mentioning both James Riley and Margaret Fairley in my talk this afternoon. We obviously probably should have actually collaborated. That was great. Okay, well, our final speaker in this first half, delighted to welcome Catherine Walker from the Royal Pharmaceutical Society's Scottish Collection. So, Catherine, we'll hand over to you.
Thank you. Can everyone see those slides?
Yep.
Great, thank you. So, hello everybody. My name is Catherine Walker, and I'm the museum manager at the Royal Pharmaceutical Society, soon to be the Royal College of Pharmacy. I'll be explaining a little bit about our Scottish collection today. So the Royal Pharmaceutical Society. The Royal Pharmaceutical Society is the professional leadership body for pharmacy in England, Scotland and Wales. And the society was founded in 1841, and the museum service was set up in 1842. And while the main RPS museum is based in the RPS headquarters in London, we do have a collection in our Scottish office in Edinburgh and a historical display in our Welsh office in Cardiff. These collections focus on the history of pharmacy as a profession and the history of the medicines they manage. But I'm going to talk to you today about our Scottish collection in particular, which can be found in our office here at 44 Melville Street. We have part of our collection on display, which explores the history of the Pharmaceutical Society in Scotland, as well as some of the weird and wonderful medicines we have in the collection. The displays include things like leech vessels. We have a visa from a pharmacist who travelled from Russia. And we have the gate from our original office where students who passed their exam could travel through the gate on leaving, and pharmacists or students who didn't pass their exam had to go out the back door. So these are stories of the sort of social history of pharmacy. But we're also happy to make our archive material available on request on a case-by-case basis. So the Scottish collection is made up of about 2,000 objects, including historical medicines, pharmacy equipment, archive material, records of individual pharmacists, prescriptions. The focus is on the history of pharmacy, particularly in Scotland. Pharmacy evolved differently in Scotland than in England and Wales, so the collection aims to capture this unique history. There's been an office in Edinburgh since 1852, focusing on the needs of Scottish pharmacists, set up by Scottish pharmacists and advocated for by Scottish pharmacists. And this was later, much later, formalised when health was devolved. Highlights from our collection include a collection of shop rounds and poison bottles, which you can just about see in this picture, showing the evolution of medicine management and medicine safety legislation. We have a collection of over 300 prescriptions dating to the 18th century, which were discovered when renovations were made to a pharmacy in Fisher Close in the Lawn Market. We have this beautiful drug run pictured here, donated by the pharmacist C.G. Drummond, who was very notable in his time. And we also have some of his own individual archive. And he had a pharmacy in Grassmarket. We also have furnishings, as I mentioned before, of the previous RPF headquarters that was at York Place. And these represent the professionalisation of pharmacy. And we also hold the Register of Chemists and Druggists and Pharmaceutical Chemists from 1868 through to 2009. This is a complete register of all pharmacists who are practicing across Great Britain. And this is particularly useful for those who are tracing individual pharmacists, individuals, particularly those who are looking to trace their pharmacy ancestors. So this is just a small selection of the pieces that we have in the collection. If you would like to access the collection, either to see the displays that we have or to access the archive, we are by appointment only, so you will need to make an appointment. We do take part in Doors Open Day each year, so there are opportunities to drop in and see the collection, but mainly it is by appointment only. So to make an appointment, you can either reach out directly to our Scottish team, or if you would like to access particular archives, we recommend that you reach out to the museum team in the first instance, and then we can support you with any specific research inquiries. We do need advanced or maybe extended notice to make some of the material available if it's stored off-site. You can also see some of the material we have in the Scottish collection in our online exhibition, A Journey Through Pharmaceutical Edinburgh. So I hope this has piqued your interest for the history of pharmacy in Scotland. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Catherine. That was great. Well, lovely. Well, that brings us to the end of this first half. Hope you've all enjoyed it as much as I did. I've learned loads, and I theoretically know about all these collections. So we'll take a short break. I'm pleased to say we've actually finished bang on time, so well done to everyone for keeping to time. Very impressive. I'm going to bow out now, and Nicky Reeves from the Hunterian is going to be chairing the second half. So Nicky will welcome you all back at 4 o'clock. So let's say we'll take a short break. Feel free to stretch your legs, and we'll come back at 4 o'clock. So we'll see you all then.
Okay, hello everybody. Welcome back to the Scotland and Medicine Showcase. I'm Nicky Reeves, Curator of Scientific and Medical History Collections at the Hunterian, and I'll be chairing this second session. Just to remind you all that the session is being recorded and will be uploaded onto the Scotland and Medicine YouTube channel. And if you've got a question for one of the speakers, please put it into the chat. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce and pass on to Claire Patterson of the University of Glasgow Library. Claire.
Hello, Nikki, and hello, everybody. I hope everybody can hear okay just now.
We can hear you, and we're hoping you're going to share
Lovely.
your screen.
Yes, and here we are. There we go. Okay, I'd like to, well, hello from the University of Glasgow again. We had one in the first half and one in the second half. So I'd just like to take the time this afternoon to talk to you about the medical humanities collections that we make available in the University Library. So the collections that we have relating to medical humanities sit within the internationally significant holdings of the University Library. So these unique and distinctive collections are wide-ranging in scope, and they cover almost every aspect of the human experience. So literature, music and theatre, science, engineering, education, business, photography. We'll just stop there. We also manage the university's own corporate archive, which document our 575-year heritage. So we benefit from a library that has been collecting for a long time. Whilst the library's first donation is recorded in 1475, we unfortunately don't have that volume anymore. It's been managed out of our collections in the intervening period. But we do hold around 60 kilometres of print collections, and about 20 kilometres of them are within archives and special collections. But in terms of our medical collections, the beginnings of our medical library was formed in August 1590, where there was a donation of 6th, 15th and 16th century books on medicine and materia medica made to the university by Mark Jameson, who was a vicar of Kilspinby. I'm sure someone will correct my pronunciation of that if I've got it wrong. But it wasn't until 1637 that the university first appointed a professor of medicine, and it was only when William Cullen took up this post in 1751 that what we understand as the university's medical school, current medical school and teaching was established. So by that period, 1750s onwards, with medical teaching and research underway, our related library collections are established, and the university made use of its status to request a copy of all relevant publications which are entered at Stationers' Hall. So we are very fortunate in having collections that have breadth and depth and have been collected for very many years. That routine collecting to support teaching at the university is really complemented and built up through the donations that we have received in terms of the personal and organisational library and archive collections that have been deposited with the university. It's the blend of academic texts and research monographs, practitioner notes and papers, administrative records and personal papers that offer a wealth of research opportunities across a multitude of disciplines, including forensic medicine, psychiatry and psychology, genetics, wellbeing, epidemiology and embryology. So in terms of scale, the most significant donation to the university is that of Dr. William Hunter, which Mike mentioned earlier. So the Hunterian Museum looks after the museum collections, and the library looks after the book and manuscript collections. And what we have at the library is a treasure trove of Hunter's professional and personal interests, with over 3,000 books focused on medicine, with, unsurprisingly, a strong representation on obstetrics and anatomy. The collection comprises classic texts and remedy books, as well as the developing knowledge around medical theory and practice from the medieval period through to when Hunter was practising in the 18th century. The collection also includes Hunter's own papers for the development of his celebrated work, The Gravid Uterus. Hunter's collections are complemented by a strong suite of 20th century archive and manuscript collections, and they document the development of new medical disciplines, of research, practice, and of teaching. These collections generally have a direct link to the university, often being the papers of researchers and academics working in the university and its teaching hospitals. So here on the screen, I've shared some of the academics who are working, teaching, and researching in Glasgow. So Professor Alec Haddo, and this is his research papers, which show the identification of the Zika virus, the first identification of the Zika virus in the mid-20th century. And that's part of the research that he was carrying out, based at Glasgow, but also in location in Uganda. And it's an amazing collection that we have available. The selection of items from the papers of Professor Thomas Ferguson Roger, which I've got on screen now, speaks to the range of material that we seek to preserve and make accessible. So this shows the kind of range of Professor Roger's own paperwork relating to not only the administration of his university department, but also curriculum development, and his notes for the university lectures he delivers. It also points to his research output, both in terms of his academic context, his scholarly publications, but also in his advisory roles to the UK Armed Services, the UK Government and the World Health Organization. So we're representing that whole life, the whole breadth of the careers that these individuals had. And I think, again, here's it's one of the wonderful things about archive and manuscript collections, that they can represent and shed light on the many aspects of individuals. And here we've got some examples from the collection of Guido Pontecorvo, who's the university's first professor of genetics. His collection really reflects the importance of the personal connections that researchers and clinicians make that develop a research community and which drive medical knowledge.
Claire, can I encourage you to wrap up? Thanks.
Yep, that's it. So these are a lovely example of where Pontecorvo was not only an academic, but he was also a generous host and sharer of his knowledge. Finally, quick mention for the Archive of Erskine Hospitals, which we make available. And this collection also gives that range of resources, not only on the medical care and treatment and rehabilitation that was provided in this hospital and charity focused on veterans and service personnel, but also the management and administration of the hospital. Where are we? Where can you find out more? You can find out a lot more online. I've shared our links there in terms of our archives and special collections in the library. We run reading rooms, virtual reading room, and inquiry service. You're always welcome to get in touch with your inquiry. We always recommend that you get in touch with us in advance of turning up so that we can help your research progress efficiently. And if you've got any questions, delighted to have them. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Claire. And moving on, next up we've got Vibeke McGee from North Lanarkshire Archives. Vibeke, I'm passing straight over to you.
Okay, can you all see my screen? Yeah, excellent. Okay, well, my name is Vibeke McGee and I'm the archivist for North Lanarkshire Council based in Motherwell. And in this role, I also look after the historical records of NHS Lanarkshire. So in my short talk today, I will provide an introduction to the range of historical archives collections we hold for NHS Lanarkshire and how you can use them also in conjunction with our local government records within North Lanarkshire Archives. So where can you find us and how can you access our records? NHS Lanarkshire Archives was established in 2017 to enable the NHS to make the historical records accessible to the public. The service is based in North Lanarkshire Heritage Centre in Motherwell, and you can visit our reading room Monday to Saturdays from 12 noon to 4 p.m. And you can also contact us by phone and email, and you can see our contact details there on the screen. So we just like the other archives we've heard about before, we have an access procedure agreed with the NHS, and when you contact us, we can advise how this will impact your research. So what do our records cover? The collections cover the entire area of NHS Lanarkshire and include locations in the North and South Lanarkshire Council area. So you can see at the top here, that's the blue area is North Lanarkshire, the purplish area is South Lanarkshire, and NHS Lanarkshire covers the two areas together. So places in the area might be Bells Hill, Kaluk, Coatbridge, Lanark, Motherwell, and Shotts. There are currently 10 administrative collections and 16 hospital collections. Together, these contain in the region of 40,000 records dating from 1879 to 2010. Here's a list of our administrative records covering NHS as well as pre-NHS times. The bulk of the administrative collections consist of minutes and agenda papers. More unusual collections I thought I highlight here are the papers of the A Picture of Health consultation, which engaged stakeholders in the review of Lanarkshire's health services in the early 2000s, and the E. coli inquiry papers, which cover the, at the time, world's largest E. coli outbreak, which happened, not largest, world's deadliest E. coli outbreak, which happened in Wishaw in 1996, when 21 people died after eating contaminated meat supplied by a local butcher's shop. The inquiry led to improvement in the hygiene regulations for butchers. Regarding our hospital collections, so you can again see the range of collections there. The hospital collections usually consist of admission registers and case files. Our largest hospital collection is a bit more comprehensive, and it is of the Lanark Asylum, which was later known as Hardwood Hospital, which was in Shorts, and there are about 30,000 records in that collection. In addition to various types of registers and case files, this collection also contains admission warrants, reports, daily statistics, letter books, financial records, details of social activities, and publications from its library. The hospital existed from 1895 to 2001, and its first physician superintendent was Dr. Archibald Campbell Clark, who promoted the value of out-of-ward employment, which was quite a new thing, and he implemented a variety of other advances in mental health care, such as that patient care should benefit from improvements in the training of attendants and nurses, and these are things he put in practice at Hardwood as well. So since the NHS records have become available to researchers, their prominent use has been for family history research. Over 80% of the inquiries received for NHS records are for this purpose. Hardwood Hospital is also a popular collection for students and researchers investigating the history of mental health care in the UK and Scotland in particular. There's also been interest in the E. coli outbreak of 1996 for research purposes. Lesser explored research potentials concern themes of public health and its development and implementation, which can be looked at in conjunction with our local government collections. So records to be considered, especially in combination with the pre-NHS records, which are available at the same site in Motherwell, are Poor Law and Parish Council records, borough records, including Inspector of Health records, and school logbooks. And finally, I would like to highlight one other collection which spans the time before and after the introduction of the NHS, which is our Dr. James Lumsden collection. A medical graduate of the University of Glasgow, James Lumsden took up the post of Medical Officer of Health for the Borough of Airdrie in 1944, and from 1975 he held the equivalent post in the newly created Monklands district until the 1980s, so quite a long period of time he was in a similar post in the same area. So during this time at Airdrie, he became a leading figure in the local district hospitals board of management and in the Lanarkshire Health Board. This archive concludes files dating from 1907 to 1991 and relate to a wide range of medical and administrative topics. So you can see them here on the screen, like school health services, maternity service, and so on, but also about specifically about infectious diseases, which also includes sort of early dealings with HIV and AIDS under his public health remit. And this leads me to the end of the talk. Thank you so much for listening to me, and please contact me if you have any questions about our collections and how to access them. Thank you.
Thank you, Vibeke. Moving on, it's my pleasure to introduce Andrew Dowsey from On Fife Archives. Andrew, are you with us? There you are. Please share your screen.
Sorry, that's not working. Just bear with me.
Take your time, no worries.
Try that again.
This looks good. Well done.
So,
Brilliant.
So can you actually see my slides, or is it just the PowerPoint?
We can see your screen. We can see your PowerPoint program, and we can see your mouse moving around. But we can't see your slides. Have you clicked on slideshow?
Cool.
Right, I'm going to make the executive decision to say you're going to have to give the talk without the slides, or we could bring Matthew in and you can have a fiddle about with your slides. Which would you prefer, Andrew? Matthew could do his session whilst you have a go, or you can give the talk without. Should we do that?
Yeah, cool.
Is that okay with everybody? Matthew, I've just volunteered you. I hope you're not absent. Matthew, it's my pleasure to introduce Matthew Jarron of the University of Dundee Tayside Medical History Museum, who's going to speak next, and then we'll come back hopefully to Andrew afterwards.
Okay, so thank you very much. I'm going to be telling you about one of the various collections that we look after as part of the University of Dundee Museums, and that is the Tayside Medical History Museum based at Nine Wells Hospital. The museum actually predates the formal establishment of the University Museum collections, and it goes back to the late 1980s, and to this lady on the left here, Dr. Laura Adam, who was a researcher in renal medicine at the medical school here. She had a great interest in medical history, and got together a little committee of interested staff from both the school and the NHS. And with the support from the Professor of Medicine at the time, Charles Forbes, they founded the museum in 1989 and started putting on small displays like this in the foyer of the medical school. He also began using the growing collection to teach medical students, something we still do today, as I'll come back to later. Laura's successor as honorary curator, Dr. Graham Lowe, on the far left here, was a senior consultant dermatologist, and he significantly expanded the museum, which by now was formally part of the university's accredited museum collections. One of his initiatives was to create satellite displays in various hospitals around the NHS Tayside area, including Blairgowrie, Aberfeldy and Pitlochry. A refurbishment of the medical school in 2014 meant that we lost our temporary exhibition space, but gained a new permanent display just outside the main lecture theatre. And we have various smaller displays in other parts of Nine Wells Hospital and further afield, as I'll come on to mention later. So the collection has grown steadily over the years, and in total, including our related collections from anatomy, physiology, pathology and nursing, we now have over 3,000 objects telling the story of medical innovation and practice in the region. This includes material relating to some of our key local heroes. So just as a few examples, Thomas McLagan was medical superintendent at Dundee Royal Infirmary in the 1860s, where he introduced the clinical use of the thermometer, but he's best known for developing a pain-relieving drug called salicin, which was later taken up by German researchers and evolved into aspirin. Rebecca Strong was matron at DRI in the 1870s. A former pupil of Florence Nightingale, she introduced the formal training of nurses to Dundee. She later moved to Glasgow, where the block apprenticeship training system that she pioneered was later copied by countries all around the world. And we were recently given a number of objects by her descendants, including the OBE that she was awarded for services to nursing. Alasdair's already mentioned Margaret Fairley, who was an obstetrician who introduced radium treatments for gynecological cancers at DRI and became Scotland's first female university professor when she was awarded the chair of obstetrics and gynecology at the medical school. We also heard a reference to James Riley earlier. He was a radiotherapist whose groundbreaking work establishing the mast cell as the major source of histamine in the body paved the way for antihistamine treatments for allergies. And coming up to date with more recent pioneers, Sir Alfred Cuschieri is widely recognised as one of the world's leading experts in laparoscopic or keyhole surgery, and we have some of the original prototype instruments that he and his team have developed. But of course, the history of medicine isn't just the history of key individuals and innovations, it's also the story of institutions and medical care more broadly. So we also have lots of material relating to the history of individual hospitals, of different medical treatments through the years, some of which were definitely more or less effective than others, and also the social history of medicine. So, for example, the constant need to fundraise for hospitals in the pre-NHS days, or the various things that doctors have got up to in their spare time. So as I mentioned, we have a number of permanent displays for the collections within Nine Wells Hospital, and these are open for anyone to come and see any time, but we also show material from the collections in various other venues. So, for example, at Dundee Science Centre, we curated a permanent display on the history of surgery using instruments from the museum. We also have a medical display in the McManus, the main city museum in Dundee, as part of their social history gallery. And one of the most successful projects of recent years has been working directly with medical students to curate mini exhibitions as part of their coursework. So twice a year, we have a group of students who choose their own topic, research it, and put together their own display using objects from the collection. It's a great way of making connections between the history of medicine and the current curriculum in a way that's relevant for them, and they learn a whole range of communication and interpretation skills as well. And that's all I've got time to tell you about. So thanks very much for listening.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you, Matthew. So let's try to go back to Andrew from On 5. Andrew.
I'm Andrew Dowsey. I'm the Archives and Local Studies Manager for On at 5 Archives. We're based in Glenrothes. We look after the historical records of Fife Health Board, but this afternoon I'm going to talk to you about the personal papers of Dr. David Wishart and Dr. Helen Wishart. David was a GP in Kirkcaldy for 40 years. He was also an active member of White's Causeway Baptist Church and keenly involved in the YMCA. We have a mixture of his personal notebooks and address books, along with the texts of speeches and talks he gave as a GP. There's one talk about the future of medicine he gave in 1942, and there's another talk, for example, he gave about the lighter side of his experiences as a GP. This is a page from his address book for the letter C, and you'll see it's a strange blend of home life and work life. We have his contacts at the Children's Hospital alongside the address for his favourite cheese from Dumfries and Galloway and where he got his curling stones from. For the last 3 years of his working life, David worked alongside his niece, Dr. Helen Wishart. Helen was a GP in Kirkcaldy for 31 years. Throughout her life, Helen kept a diary, and these diaries form the bulk of this collection. Here we've got a page from her diary as a first-year medical student at St Andrews in 1948. Dr. Mayer, varsity doctor, addressed Butte Medical Society on general practice. Much good advice. Quite a humorist. Did his job well. But I don't like the man much. And it's this honesty that runs through Helen's diaries that I think make them such a great resource, whether she's writing about how she feels about herself, about work, about home and family life, about her faith. Like David, she was a keen member of White's Causeway Baptist Church, and that was a big part of her time outside of work. Or whether Helen's writing about current affairs and news and how she feels about that. Helen was also a great writer of lists, and quite often in the diaries we'll find a list like this of Christmas presents that she's received. This list comes from 1958. Those of you with very good eyesight will have spotted that her mum and dad gave Helen a handbag, Uncle David and Auntie Jean gave Helen some money. And I'm going to read you a poem that one of Helen's patients wrote for her, which I think sums up the importance of that kind of personal relationship between a GP and their patients. She's been my family doctor for years and years and years. She's coped with all my sorrows, my hopes, my joys, my fears. Her uncle, Dr. David, like her, was fond of tots. As children, when we'd see him, he'd give us chocolate drops. My being paraplegic makes house calls just a must, but my dear Dr. Wishart, like God, in her I trust. A grateful patient. And for us, we're particularly interested in Helen's diaries between 1958 and 1989, when she was working as a GP in Fife. The collection also includes the texts of talks and speeches that Helen gave as a GP, including talks on sex education and relationships she gave to third-year pupils at a local school, and talks about what it was like to be a GP in Kirkcaldy. There's also her personal and practice accounts, and one of her passions outside of work was wildflowers. And there's a set of slides and notes of different trips she'd been on with friends to discover different types of wildflowers in Fife and wider across Scotland. Thank you for listening. If you have any questions, please get in touch with us at archive.inquiries@onfife.com. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Andrew. Lots of positive yellow hands clapping through the air. Our next presentation is by Eva Savalainen from National Museum Scotland. Eva can't be here today, but I believe that Matthew Jarron's going to press play on a recording.
Hi everyone, my name is Eva Savalainen and I am a medical humanities PhD researcher at the Universities of Stirling and Glasgow. In this presentation, I want to take you back to September last year when I started an internship at the Science and Technology Department at the National Museum of Scotland. This internship was kindly funded by the Scottish Graduate School for the Arts and Humanities, who are funding my PhD. It's a real joy to be included in the Scotland and Medicine showcase today. Over 4 months, I was working under the wonderful Sophie Goggins, who is the Senior Curator of Biomedical Science at the National Museum of Scotland. And I was tasked with identifying and cataloguing a large collection of surgical instruments. That collection, 258 surgical instruments donated to the National Museum in the June of 1988, before the old Royal Infirmary at Lauriston Place closed its doors and made way for what is now the Edinburgh Futures Institute. These instruments offer a rare material window into surgery at the Royal Infirmary of Edinburgh from the late 19th into the early 20th century. The collection is especially rich in gynecology, osteology, and urology. Now, just a quick note before I go further. This talk does contain references to slavery, scientific racism, and medicalized violence, so do take care as you're listening. So let's talk a bit about the methodology of this project, as well as some of the challenges that arose as a result of retrospective documentation, which basically means identifying and dating objects without much records at all. The Royal Infirmary itself moved around quite a bit. In 1879, it relocated to Lauriston Place, which became its home until 2003. This sprawling site served as a central hub for surgery and obstetrics in Scotland. But surgical instruments weren't carefully labelled with dates, and the designs of these instruments were also changing frequently during this time period. So, how to go about identifying an unusual instrument that has been sitting in a drawer for quite some time in this way? My method was cross-referencing. I worked through 19th and early 20th century surgical catalogues, comparing illustrations and descriptions to match instruments in the collection. It is worth noting that, as Ruth Pollitt has observed, not all instrument makers in Edinburgh produced surgical catalogues in the first place. Sometimes they simply did not have to, because they were located so close to the infirmary and could therefore supply them with these tools directly. Retrospective documentation has certainly got its challenges, but I was able to identify most of these instruments. Some of the instruments in this collection carry histories that demand we pause and reckon with them. Among them is the Sims vaginal speculum, an instrument still in widespread use today, though the very name of the instrument is justifiably contested. It was named after James Marion Sims, who developed it in the 19th century. What is not always mentioned is that Sims perfected his surgical techniques through repeated experimental operations performed on enslaved African American women without anesthesia. Recent research has acknowledged the Royal Infirmary's historical links to donators who were slave owners or who profited from enslaved labor. The infirmary also, to quote Rachel Scally, produced generations of medical practitioners who supported and propagated slavery and imperialism in the British Empire. So when we catalogue an instrument like the Sims speculum, we're not just describing a piece of metal, we're holding open a question: where did this come from? Who acquired it? and through what networks. The catalogue is a starting point, and there is significant room there for future research. So, 258 instruments, 4 months, and a great deal of Victorian surgical catalogue reading later, what do we have? A catalogue that will be made publicly available on the National Museum of Scotland website later this year, a resource that researchers, historians and clinicians can use to explore the material culture of Scottish surgery and to ask the harder questions that the physical objects invite us to ask. Thank you.
So we can all thank Eva in her absence, and thank you, Matthew, for ably sharing that. Moving on, we now have Anne Rinaldi from Dumfries and Galloway Council's Heritage Service. Anne, I'm going to pass straight over to you.
There we are. Can everybody see that? Is that up and running? Excellent. Hi there. Thank you for hanging on towards the end of this lovely collection. So I am the archivist at Dumfries and Galloway Archives, and in addition to local authority collections, we hold the historic NHS collections, and most notably the Crichton Royal Institution. I'll look my screen on. So the Crichton was a pioneering mental health asylum. So it was founded in 1838 by Elizabeth Crichton using the funds left to her by her late husband. The Crichton served private and charitably funded patients, making its first admission in 1839, and the last patient was transferred in 2011, so it's now closed. It became part of the NHS in 1948. The collection is approximately 110 linear metres, held on behalf of the NHS, but we have a lot of our own complementary collections and materials linked to the Crichton also. The location of the Crichton and its development of buildings and estate is integral to its story, hence the lovely images there. So there's an 85-acre landscape estate, which is now run by the Crichton Trust, and it's got nearly 150 small businesses, 3 universities and a college. That's what happened to it now. The archives themselves date from 1832 to 2008, and the Heritage Service is responsible for storing and providing access via the Urt Library, where I'm based, in the middle of the screen there. The Crichton archives are generated by patients, staff and management, and they include patient records, admin registers, photographs, artwork, ephemera, maps, plans, ledgers, and even a few objects. These provide immense detail, giving unique insights into the care of the patients and the running of the institution. So the first superintendent was Dr. Brown, who wrote a book called What Asylums Were, Are and Ought to Be. And the Crichton was founded on his principles of moral treatment, which makes the collection special. He stated that the whole secret of the new system and that of moral treatment may be summed up in 2 words, kindness and occupation. His aim was the care and recovery, not confinement of the mentally ill. So the records reflect this, as do the annual accounts of occupations and amusements listed here from the very start. So there are many unique items in the collection, and we are currently planning some exhibitions which will focus on 3 record sets which capture the Crichton's holistic regime for creative therapy using art, literature and music. So the first record set I wanted to show you was Dr. Easterbrook's scrapbook. So this was compiled in the 1940s, but contains items from the Crichton's foundation and evidences many unique innovations and records. So the scrapbook contains over 600 items, and the majority relating to recreation and social events, such as the playbill from the first play performed and produced by asylum patients in 1843, here on the right, called Raising the Wind. There's lots of concert and theatre programmes. So Rosemary Golding states of the Crichton records that there's no comparable documented collection of music performance in mid-19th century Scotland. Music at this time was mainly amateur and informal. The Crichton leaned more towards concerts than dances, unlike other asylums, and Brown noted this was because more people could attend. The scrapbooks also contain the first published library catalogue collated by patients from the 1850s. The second record set we're focusing on is that of the New Moon. So the Crichton published the earliest long-lasting magazine written by and printed by patients, and we've got a complete print run. Its intention was to give patients a vehicle for the free and undisguised feelings and views, whether erroneous or not. It was an outlet for expression within a safe space to develop agency, and access to patients' views and voices in the collection is very special indeed. The last record set I wanted to highlight today and that we're looking at is the early patient artwork. So we've got 134 early patient artworks and paintings which were uncovered in a cupboard in the 1980s on the estate. They were in a leather binding entitled Art and Madness. So these artworks and the music and the literature can be cross-referenced with the patient casebooks, the admin registers and the annual reports, and these all emphasise the impact of creativity on patient recovery. So Brown intended the artworks to demonstrate that the patients had real artistic merit. He observed that with only a few exceptions, the melancholy records of Art and Madness did not reveal a trace or allusion of the place or circumstances in which they were taken. They are just lovely pieces of art. So they're a unique example of the surviving asylum art, and it's unique in that they're fostered and collected in a comprehensive manner. There's not many of that around. Those are our collections. That's my highlight. And if anyone would like to get in touch, please do. I should say that most of our collections are digitised up to 1914, so you can see them online. Please do get in touch. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anne. Brilliant work. Okay, we have one last presentation, which is by Louise Wilkie of Surgeons' Hall Museums in Edinburgh. This also is a recorded talk because Louise can't make it. So Matthew is going to press play again.
Good afternoon. My name is Louise Wilkie and I'm the Curator of Surgeons' Hall Museums at the Royal College of Surgeons of Edinburgh. I'm sorry I cannot be with you in person today, but I'm delighted to present the museum and the college collections to you. The Royal College of Surgeons of Edinburgh is one of the oldest surgical colleges in the world. Founded in 1505, the college began collecting in the late 17th century, and by the early 19th century decided a museum would benefit the training of surgeons and the wider public. In 1832, the college moved to our current location in the newly built Playfair building and opened the museum. This has remained open to the public ever since, making us one of the oldest museums in the country. The museum expanded and was refurbished in 2015 and is now open to the public 7 days a week and can also be viewed on the Bloomberg Connects app. The entire collection has been recognised as a nationally significant collection for Scotland, and I'm happy to introduce you to some of the key areas of the collection today. The human remains collections make up over half of the entire collection of the museum. We have one of the largest collections of pathology in the UK. The collections were collected from the 1700s to the late 1990s to form a medical teaching collection. The human remains are primarily surgical pathology and anatomical, including wet and dry pathology, so tissue and bone, and preserved anatomical skeletons and dissections. The college collections also include various medical casts and models, which were crucial to medical teaching prior to modern imaging techniques. We acknowledge and respect the individuals whose remains contributed to advancements of human knowledge and who are held in the care of Surgeons' Hall Museums. The instrument collections hold a significant range of surgical instruments and devices, and in many cases can showcase the developments of surgical specialties from the 19th century to present day. The museum collection holds items that once belonged to some of the most significant names in surgical history, including James Young Simpson, the midwifery professor who discovered chloroform, Joseph Lister, the discovery of antiseptic technique and so named the father of modern medicine, and the collection also represents important Scottish surgical instrument makers, including Edinburgh maker Archibald Young. We are still discovering the importance of some of the instruments we hold, and we continue to develop this collection to keep up with the rapid developments in surgery. The dental collections at the museum are one of the largest in the UK and cover the extraordinary development of dentistry from a tooth pulling trade into the medical profession we recognise today. As you can see, the collection showcases historic tooth pulling tools, which certainly make us shudder today, including the dental key and the pelican, and early attempts at dentures. The dental collection continues to grow, showcasing advancements in all areas, including tooth replacement and repair. The art collection includes numerous portraits of the college's famed surgical and dental fellows, but also includes a significant surgical and dental artwork collection, including medical illustrations, which highlight that close relationship between art and medicine. The college has a significant library and archive collection as well, which holds nearly 400 years' worth of books, letters, diaries, and photographs. The three collections of the college prove extremely useful for researchers with many crossover areas, particularly from key surgical figures, groups and history, such as the Scottish Women's Hospital for Foreign Service, James Young Simpson and midwifery, surgical teaching, and even the famed author Arthur Conan Doyle and his lifelong friendship with Sherlock inspiration surgeon Joseph Bell. Just to conclude, we continue to develop the collections. Last year we commissioned an artwork to represent the Hunter Doig Medal winners to increase the representation of women in the college's art collection, and we continue to collect surgical instruments and technology, including robotics. Our entire collections can be viewed online, available on our website, and if you have any questions, please do reach out to the museum or indeed the college's archive and library on the contacts below. It's been a pleasure speaking with you today. Thank you.
So thank you, Louise. I'm just going to quickly check. There's a little comment here from Charlotte. This has been an enjoyable and interesting. I so appreciate being able to take this museum and archives tour around Scotland all the way here from Iowa. So from Scotland to Iowa, thank you for summarizing things so well for us, Charlotte. To remind everybody, this set of talks has been recorded and will be uploaded onto the Scotland and Medicine YouTube at some point. Thank you to all of the speakers for being brilliant and keeping to time. Thank you to everyone else who attended for being here and showing an interest. And Matthew, do you need me to pass back to you, or should we just stop there? I'm going to pass back. Oh, Matthew's shaking his head. Okay, we're 1 minute early. Go forth. Enjoy the spring. Thank you, folks.
Thanks for coming, everyone.
Thank you.